It's 5 p.m. and I will call the meeting to order and ask everyone to
Yes,
rise
ma'am.
for the invocation to be delivered by Reverend John F. Sada.
Where's the Rev?
And in
I don't see
lack
the
of
Rev.
that,
What about Glenn? Glenn can step in for once.
Reverend Spalding, would you want to do that tonight? If you don't, we don't want to put you on the spot. I can do it.
You can do it.
You can stand right, and you can
You
stand right
gotta do
there. Hey, Reverend, you can just stand right there. It'll be fine. So please,
Go over there. Yeah, go over that to the dais, sir, buddy. To the podium.
Let's try it. God, we come to you tonight with a word of thankfulness because you have spared us sin of the day. Help us in that deliberation to come to a consistent to help this community be in unity together. Bless the commissioners and the mayor and those who are in the work of the city. Bless the ones who come tonight. This I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
thank you, Reverend.
Buddy, he's good.
Please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance to be led by City Commissioner Scott Tippett.
I'll try to project. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated.
I would like to say a word about that. This morning at KSU, a young lady committed suicide. And we want you to pray for that family and for the university. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rev.
Thanks, Rev.
Let's all remember the family and loved ones of a student who we found deceased today.
We do a moment of silence. Is that what we're doing?
Just so you remember. We can if you want.
Well, I would like to do a moment of silence for that student. Her name has not been released, but I'd like to do a moment of silence for her, as well as a moment of silence for Anita Franklin, who passed away in Lexington, Kentucky. She was an activist. Her son was killed with gunfire in a park in Lexington. And so she died this morning. So I'd like to remember both of those for maybe a 30-second silence, please. Thank you.
All right. I would ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Waldridge,
Here.
Commissioner Tippett,
Here.
Commissioner Wissman,
Present.
Commissioner Sauer,
Here.
Mayor May.
Yeah, we do have a quorum present, and the first item would be citizen comments. Do we have any comments?
Yes,
Did
I
anybody
think we
sign
had
up?
a few.
I think we're bringing some up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Doo-doo-doo.
Thanks, Rebecca. We have Mr. David Kamak with us tonight to be first to talk about Capitol View Park Sourfield lights. If you would just come forward and state your name for the record, even though I know who you are, and I know where you live, I know a lot of things about you, but
Facing the firing squad.
it's all right.
Hello, my name is David Kamak. I currently serve on the Frankfort Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and I'm here tonight on behalf of the board to share our opinion on the installation of the new lights on the Sauer soccer fields at Capitol View Park. It is, but we're very excited and thankful that we are on the radar for these upgrades, but we would like to see maybe if we could pump the brakes just a little bit, let the cake bake on this issue until the study has been completed with the park's master plan. Some things may come out of that, that if we go ahead and install these lights, we're married to these lights. We will not be able to do maybe what comes out of the study. So just, I'm here, like I said, I'm here just to give you the opinion of the advisory board, just to take that into consideration.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, next, we have Mr. Bill Cole to speak on two-way main.
Yeah, I'm Bill Cole, live at 503 Murray in Frankfort, and thank you all for letting me speak again. And as you know, I've been consistently opposed to two-way main, both from my life downtown at the Grand Theater and then more recently with the acquisition of the firehouse and intention of restoring. You know, Natalie Wilkerson came to me and said, hopefully it's the last time we need to talk, because as you all know, we've sort of been on opposite sides of that. We have found an ability, I think, on the firehouse to be on the same side, I think. But you know, the last time I talked to you all, which actually is almost a year ago, talked about the fact that you all had redesigned the specifications to Vaughn and Milton. And I think all you all know this. Initially, both integrated in Vaughn and Milton, and then at the time, the city engineer had all designed the specs that required quite a bit of work and quite a bit of things under the intention of safety for us downtown that needed to be done, and the city abandoned and picked back up. And as best I understand it, if it's incorrect in any way, you know, you guys can correct me. You revised on your own the specs to lower, I guess, the whether it's the kind of vehicle or whatever, and told Vaughn and Milton to do the design based on that, as opposed to asking them what they should do. As I said then, last one here, I think that's, I do not consider that a prudent way to make a decision as a commissioner. And I would hope tonight, I understand you all have two-way on this consent calendar, that you all will actually state your reasons why you believe it is a prudent decision to go forward with it in a way that, to me, just based on the amount of money you're going to spend, cannot do the things that were identified as things that needed to be. Again, I view that the kind of bottleneck traffic, that the difficulties people are going to have of deliveries, in our case, just no matter what you all do, remember, when the buses come, Kevin Bacon, Delbert McClinton, Robert Cray, lots of people, Johnny Lang, like to come and see them. They stick 3 feet out beyond the parking space. And obviously that's something we have to do. And so I am also concerned, but again, my main opposition is not about the buses, but it's something that's going to be, I believe, a difficulty for people to get around those, and they'll have to go into the other lane a little bit. But thank you all very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Tippett,
May I?
do you want to would you
Yes.
mind answering a question?
Of course.
Thank you, Mr. Cole.
I'd be happy.
Thank you.
You are aware, of course, that when I first came on to the City Commission, that one of my platform planks was two-way Main Street. You are aware, right? What I would say to you, sir, is in the last 2.5, 3 years on my time on the commission, my position has evolved on this, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that I'm opposed to two-way main. It's just I think we have other opportunities that we need to focus on, like with a laser-like focus, especially parcels B and C. And we don't have to do this now. We do not have to do this now. Okay, there's no urgent need. When I came onto the commission, what I was looking for was trying to find projects that would stimulate economic activity in downtown Frankfort. And I was convinced through engineering studies and other experts that needed to happen. Now I've come to realize that what we need is intrinsic demand, okay, in the urban core. And the way we stimulate that is we laser-like focus on parcel B and C. And if we get data that clearly demonstrates that two-way Main Street would facilitate the development of parcel B and C, then that's a no-brainer. Then everybody's for that. Now it's like, well, we're going to roll the dice and hope it works. And my fellow colleagues here have said to me and said to other people, well, if it doesn't work, we'll change it. Well, I guess we can do that. But I think a more prudent path would be for us to accumulate some solid empirical data, economic data, that ties two-way Maine to parcel B and C. And if we got that, it's a home run. And that can wait, my opinion. Thank you.
That's not a question for me.
That's a rhetorical question. I asked you a question if you remembered my position, my original position.
I do.
And you did, right?
I do.
Yes.
I do. I did.
Thank you.
That was the question. He could have just nodded his head from his seat. I'm sorry, I'm talking.
Do what now?
We just go back. I said, he could have just answered that.
Thank you for indulging me, sir.
You could have just, I said, you could have just nodded your head from the seat. It's okay, Commissioner. I'm just kidding. It's not-
Y'all
there's
gonna
always-
take me away.
Thank you all.
Good point. Next, Anna Marie Rosen talking about hauling. We got some recycling? Or just hauling stuff?
My name is Anna Marie Rosen. I live here in downtown Frankfort. And yes, I read over the agenda for tonight, and I noticed there was one item under the consent calendar that talked about getting estimates for, or costs for hauling recycled materials and garbage. And back on February 12th, so just a week and a half ago, I was at West Rock for a second discussion with them, and they talked about that they do hauling for various municipals and counties here in Kentucky. And what they proposed was the idea of a walking floor truck, which they would leave portion of the truck with whatever municipal it is, and they'd fill that, and then they come with their truck and bring the materials to their recycle center. And I think it would be good to include a quote from them on what that would cost under their system, to be compared with the other quotes for hauling recycled materials. So that was just a suggestion I had. And I believe Katie, who's in charge of getting estimates for that, visited West Rock, but at that time, that earlier meeting, we didn't discuss hauling, and that came up more recently. And so I would suggest that we hold that up a little bit or do whatever we need to do to get an estimate from them as well at this point.
I have a question.
Okay. Commissioner Walsh wants to ask a question. If you
Okay,
would
good.
you answer?
Sure, I have a
Sure, I'm
question.
happy to.
I'm aware that all of these meetings going on at the recycle and things. So is your stance on the recycle portion of it? Like that is your goal, is to basically recycle?
Well,
I
I'd
mean,
like
what
to-
is the goal?
Okay, I'd like to see more things recycled than we're recycling right now. But my interest was to bring more people to West Rock to look at their operation, to see what is entailed in recycling, to understand more things about how the market keeps changing and how we could respond to that situation and put more things into recycling, reuse, than into the landfill, which is becoming more expensive and harder to find locations to landfill at this point. So my goal here is for the best solution for our community. And by including another hauler for recycled goods, I think that would give us the possibility of coming out with the best financial situation. So, any other questions?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Walsh
I had a
still has.
follow-up. Go ahead.
Okay, go for it.
My follow-up would be, I have not met with West Rock, however, I spoke with Katie and some of her staff, actually right when we crossed over in 2019, in regards to West Rock. And if I'm not mistaken, some of the information that we gathered back is, yes, it is a recycle facility, and if our goal is recycle, then we have to be pertinent that it is recycled, that I don't want my residents here in Frankfort think we're paying for a service for it to go to Louisville. But when it gets to Louisville, we're taking it for it to be recycled. But if Louisville decides not to recycle it, they don't have to tell Frankfort that it was recycled or not. So it could actually be taken to a landfill. But and I feel like we're up in the air on this, because if we take it to Louisville and then we're telling, oh, we're recycling, Frankfort, we're recycling, but Louisville actually puts it in a landfill just because they've had enough recycling for that day. I think that that's just like what would I say? Sort of just covering the truth. And so I want to make sure that if we actually are going to recycle, that we want our things recycled, and that we're not just fathoming over our community to say, we're recycling. when it leaves Frankfort, that's what we're doing. And we don't care what happens to it afterwards. So if our goal is for Frankfort to actually recycle and help our earth and recycle, then we need to make sure that whatever service that we do use actually is going to recycle and not take it upon themselves to put it in a landfill, because we can do that here. And I just don't want our constituents here to feel great about it, but when it's really truly not working. So that's why I would like to get more information on, talk about that with Katie and allow them to do their job to make sure that we're not doing that, if that makes sense.
Yep, and I could add a few comments to that.
Sure.
I know that there have been a lot of articles in various publications about when you think you're recycling, it's not really happening.
Right.
Having visited West Rock twice and also looked at their corporate report, they're an international company, they have a lot at stake to actually do what they're saying. And they not only do recycling of all plastics, paper, cardboard, metals, but they do a composting operation as well. And so they're fully integrated in many areas. In talking to Kim Martinez, their spokesperson, she said that 5 to 8% of what they get can't be recycled, and that does go to the landfill. But when you look at the costs of recycling per load and the cost going to landfill per load, they would be losing money if they didn't recycle it, because it costs more to send it to the landfill than it does to the recycler. So I'm confident that they're actually doing what they say they're doing, and they're constantly working on expanding their markets for paper or fiber materials. They have their own plants that it goes to by rail line that's right there. So I think that they are an honest company, and that they, will tell us if, I know they talk to some of the companies or the municipals or counties that send them waste. If the load is unacceptable, they get back to them immediately with pictures and with what they can do better. They use the example of not actually cleaning out those persons' trucks to get land material like yard waste out of the truck before they send it to recycle. So they follow up. They're, I think, very professional in what they're doing, and they Kim actually did talk to their plastic companies that they sell to and ask them, does any of this material go outside of the United States? How is it used? She's working on a spreadsheet of that. And all of the plastic companies that buy the material from them said it stays within the United States. None of it leaves by any form other than whatever product they make from it.
Thank you.
Commissioner
That's what I
Tippett,
wanted to know.
anything?
Yeah.
City manager wanted to interject something if we could real
City
quick on that.
manager, and then
I yield, Mayor.
Okay, then
Mr. Wilson.
then Commissioner Wisman.
All right. How about we this is on the consent agenda. Probably a larger part than hauling for recycling on this is hauling to our landfill. The Republic was the low bid. So what I would say is this goes through tonight, and within the next few days, Katie, we need to put something in writing. We need Katie to reach out and see what it would cost to do what you're saying.
Okay.
They drop a truck here or drop something we can fill up and they come pick it up. What we need to do is show numbers to going to Louisville or to Lexington. And there's obviously other benefits, I assume, for either one, but we need to kind of put a number on it. And if there's another option for West Rock to do that, let's take a couple of days, figure that out, put something in writing for the commission to review, and we'll just, I think we move forward with this contract, but maybe we just hold on to it for a few days while we study that option. I hadn't heard the option of dropping it.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a new option.
Okay, great. That sounds good, and I'll give the information to Katie.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wisman.
Mayor, you sort of beat me to the punch, but I was going to request that we remove number 3 for discussion and make it number 9 on action items to answer some of these questions. And I do have a few others I'd like to ask Katie to answer for us at later in the meeting as well. That option has been fairly new. We did not discover that in the first trip that I organized. Right. And it's fairly evident to me in now touring both the Louisville and the Lexington facilities that the for-profit company that services the largest metropolitan area in the state and 5 or 6 other counties and multiple other cities is our best option. And it is a bit naive to think that a multi-million-dollar for-profit company is accepting things just to throw them away. They did tell us 5 to 8% of their refuse that comes in is unacceptable, more so because of citizens not understanding what they can put in recycling that has to then be thrown out of those items. But it's obvious that that is the best option. So if we can pull that to the action items for further discussion, I'd like to do so.
Any other commissioners?
Yes, Mayor. And we
Without
want
objection, well, if there's no other objections.
no objection.
Just kind of a concern that I have in the way we're handling this. Mr. City Manager, wouldn't you suggest maybe a better format would to be to rebid the contract because of this? You know, the winner of this contract, what has been recommended to us, they've already gone out on a line to say what their price would be.
Yeah.
That's a great advantage to any competitor, whether they're in Louisville, Lexington, or Cincinnati. So can you speak to that concern of mine?
I would approve this contract now because I think our refuse contract hauling is expired, and we're on kind of a month-to-month basis right now. So, but I think our contract, the way it's written, allows us to do, we have a lot of flexibility. If we come in and we just use them for hauling to the landfill, I don't think they would complain if we found a different option on recycling. So I don't think we're married to the recycling hauler by this contract. I think we're always allowed to look at what's best for.
Even though it's a 5-year contract that we
Yeah, I think, but we'll double check that. Before we send this contract to them, we will double, triple check.
Absolutely, we will definitely check. But if we're gonna pull this for, I'm sorry, Mayor, I didn't ask, have you recognized. But if we're gonna pull this, no, I figured. If we're gonna pull this for the action items, we can kind of discuss that more then if we want, rather than in citizen comments.
And Mayor.
Commissioner Sauer.
Tippett.
What you through?
I through, sir.
Okay, Commissioner Tippett.
I'll also request that we move number 4 on the consent agenda to action items.
that would be action item number 11, right?
10. Number 10.
I thought yours.
What was the other one, Eric, number 3?
That's the reason. Number 3 becomes 9, number 4 becomes 10.
And 60 is the new 40.
And we needed to also pull number 5, I believe.
What?
Is that correct?
We're just gonna remove number 5. Yeah, we won't even pull the action item. We're gonna delay that for a month at least. So we'll just remove 5 if that's okay with you all.
Do you want to object to removing number 5?
No.
No objections? Okay, so.
Mayor,
Commissioner Tippett?
please, would you clarify your 60 is a new 40 comment?
Look in the mirror.
Okay, that's what I thought you meant. So we're both the new 40, right?
I'm not that old. I'm just kidding. You're just like- Yes.
Fair about Mayor.
Sorry. Next we have Natalie Wilkerson, and Mr. Marcus, you want to wait till the end? Wherever you are. There's no. Yeah, that's okay.
Good evening, I'm Natalie Wilkerson. I live on Ann Street downtown. I'm here to speak in favor of the two-way West Main Street item. In first place, I'm thankful to see it on the agenda. I thank the Public Works staff for carrying this through. It's consistent with the ideas that were set forth in the City Commission-approved master plan to increase navigability, access downtown. I would say, in relation to Commissioner Tippett's comment about Parcel B, which I'm really hoping goes gangbusters from here on out, but I would argue that for West Main Street, the time is now, because Parcel B includes ample square footage for retail space there, and with the infrastructure of expanding Washington Street down there, it's very possible that West Main Street and downtown as a whole gets left behind by Parcel B. Please, let's breathe some life into this street now. There are excellent projects going on right there at that intersection with the firehouse, with the Mason and Hogue building, with the Marcus building. please, let's give that the life and the support that it needs now, when it needs it the most. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes citizen comments. Unless someone got here late and didn't get a chance to sign in. If you did, we'll give you that opportunity. And if not, we'll come back later. Yeah. All right, next item then. Oh, before we go on, I just wanted to point out for those that are asking questions, on our recyclables that we collect, those are stored at the recycling center before they're hauled. So they're not immediately picked up and hauled that day. If you want to come over and see the process, it's pretty
I've seen the process.
interesting. No, I was talking about the public. You're welcome to do that, but that was one of the reasons why we can wait and move forward with the hauling for the solid waste tonight. May not pass, but that's what we've got on the agenda. All right, going back up. First presentation we have is Miss Nicole Kunkel, who's a professional archaeologist and concerned citizen of Frankfort, and she's here to give some information on Leslie Morris Park. Correct?
Thank you for the call.
Let's go.
Hi, I'm Nicole Conkle, a 3-year resident of Frankfort who has, for the first time in my life, found a place that is special enough to inspire me to call it, invest in, and make it my forever home. Tonight, I'm a friendly neighborhood archaeologist. Thank you for the opportunity to share with this board and the community information on the cultural resources within Leslie Morris Park. For expediency's sake, I'm going to jump right in and try to follow this script. I have made an attempt to address any particular questions or points of concern regarding historic resources at Leslie Morris Park that board members have expressed during conversations or meetings I've attended over the past couple of years. For the purposes of tonight's presentation, I will try to be very explicit with place names to which this presentation refers. Fort Hill is a topographic feature of the landscape. Leslie Morris Park is the property owned by the city. The Civil War site is the existing National Register listing within the park. And that's how I will use those place names. There have been several cultural resource studies done within the park, but the most recent and comprehensive archaeological study was done in 2013, when the city had a comprehensive archaeological survey of the entire park done. Mr. Downs at the City Museum was kind enough to share that archaeological report with me, and that report is my primary source that I'll be referencing tonight. The report was completed by the Kentucky Archaeological Survey, with Dr. J. Stockman as the primary author, and contributions by Eric Slarb and Kim McBride. It's a lot of text, I know, but it's important. In every public discussion of archaeological sites in Fort Hill or Leslie Morris Park, the Civil War component of the National Register listed site is at the forefront, which may be as it should be. But there's more archaeology and significant history to consider at Leslie Morris Park than just one particular component of one site. The 2013 archaeological study also documented 2 historic farmsteads and 19th century stone fencing as being potentially eligible for listing on the National Register. Additional work would be needed to be done at these sites to determine whether or not they are eligible for National Register listing. The mapped information shown here was provided to me by the city along with permission to use it. Please don't replicate it in any way or distribute this image. If you find yourself needing this information, please seek the city's permission. This image shows the topography of Fort Hill with the boundaries of Leslie Morris Park shown in blue. Let's see. What?
It won't show on the screen.
Oh, okay. The stone fencing is shown in, is shown in purple, and it's the smallest feature, so let me point it out here.
So, excuse me, Nicole, the blue that surrounds the green, that's the boundary of the park, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
at least it was in 2013.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So the park is in blue, and there are actually 3 locations of archaeological sites shown. On the eastern periphery is the Edwards Farmstead archaeological site. Towards the southwest, the boundaries of the Civil War site and the Weber Farmstead, which falls at least partially within the boundaries of the Civil War site, are shown. So that right there actually is one site and part of another archaeological site. Currently, the only National Register listed archaeological site within Leslie Morris Park is the Civil War site. It was originally listed on the National Register in 1985 as an archaeological site encompassing Fort Boone and the new redoubt and the area between the two. In 1996, the National Register listing boundary was expanded to include the old military access road from, and this is a quote from the form, to include the old military access road from the southwest base of Fort Hill to the core of the site and to provide a 100-foot buffer around the previous Civil War site boundaries. The National Register criteria of, and this is another quote, events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of our history was also added. Sidebar here. There are several areas of significance that are considered criteria for listing a property on the National Register of Historic Places. Very generally speaking, they are events, lives, distinctive characteristics, and archaeology. The rough guesstimated total acreage of all documented archaeological sites and features combined within Leslie Morris Park is about 20 acres. The Civil War site is about 10.5 acres. The left column of this slide lists the documented cultural resources within the park and their designations. While the National Register listing of the Civil War archaeological site component itself does not necessarily provide the overarching protections or use restrictions that most people would think, other laws do apply to cultural resources on public property in Kentucky. I won't get too far down in the weeds with these laws tonight, but the state antiquities law applies to archaeological sites owned by city and county government. If you would like additional information on Kentucky's archaeological resource laws, you can find it under KRS Chapter 164. The tools listed on the right column are options that might be useful when considering the entirety of Leslie Morris Park. For the most part, the archaeological research is already done, with the exception of assessing the historic farmstead sites and historic stone fencing for National Register eligibility. None of those tools listed are necessarily mutually exclusive from one another. So, preservation tool 1. It's not actually, I don't have a slide for it, but it's the most basic and expeditiously applicable preservation tool. And it's to install and update consistent, aesthetically pleasing fencing and informative signage surrounding, but well outside each of the 3 archaeological site boundaries, with a qualified archaeologist involved in the conversation throughout planning and implementation of the design. The use of this tool may not be appropriate for the historic fencing or where the Weber Farmstead overlaps the Civil War site. Careful consideration is necessary to make sure the fencing and signage are well outside the actual boundaries of all of the archaeological sites so as not to damage them. For archaeological sites or features with above ground elements, like the Edwards Farmstead and the stone fencing, additional care might be needed to avoid any negative impacts to the integrity of the archaeological site or the viewshed surrounding it. Excuse me. The tools mentioned here are not all inclusive of every option out there, but cull down to the most appropriate actions to consider specific to the cultural resources within Leslie Morris Park. The evaluations resulting from these tools, should you choose to use them, may reveal that these sites are not eligible for National Register listing. That does not mean that they might not be part of a greater whole in a different tool. Slide 8. The archaeology. It's the coolest of all the preservation tools. An archaeological site is much more than a collection of artifacts from a general area. Very detailed horizontal and vertical location information must be recorded on artifacts and features within a site. Knowing where on the ground and under the ground an artifact or feature was located is as important as the artifact itself. Archaeologists can often get more information about a site from the artifact's location than they can from the artifact itself. So, archaeology is a little weird in that archaeologists excavate a key component in the argument for National Register eligibility, which is integrity, out of existence. So if the spatial relationship of the elements is damaged prior to proper documentation, the information's gone forever. You cannot get it back. It's impossible. It's destroyed. The potential for the loss of site integrity is a particular concern at one, if not both, of the historic farmstead sites. There's a type of feature called a topsoil midden, and that translates roughly to historic trash heaps very close to the ground surface. The pictures on the left show topsoil middens at archaeological sites. They're not pictures of the archaeological sites at Leslie Morris Park. These types of features are extremely sensitive because they are located so close to the ground surface. They're very easy to disturb. So if the location of artifacts or features of a site are disturbed without proper documentation by archaeologists, then the integrity of the site is lost forever, making the argument of National Register eligibility challenging, to say the least.
Was that Mount Vernon?
I honestly don't know. I pulled the first two topsoil images of topsoil middens.
We should have had it again. I'm sorry.
Okay. Preservation tool 2 is additional targeted archaeological testing of the sites specified in Stockman's 2014 report as potentially eligible for National Register listing. If the sites are found to not be eligible, then once and for all, that information will be available to factor into future park planning. The National Register evaluations of these sites could, in itself, be used as a public education and outreach tool, as past archaeological studies instigated by the city within the park have. So conducting this research, even if the finding is negative, could still be a positive for the park in Frankfort by making the public aware and inviting them to participate in an appropriate manner. The results of the evaluations, if found to support National Register eligibility, could be used to increase heritage tourism in Frankfort in perpetuity. There are avenues available for applying for grants to assist in covering the cost of these investigations that city staff members Jordan Miller and Rebecca Hall are already well versed in. Should the sites be found eligible for National Register listing, there are funding opportunities that can be applied for to aid in the cost of preparing that too. Preservation tool 3. Since the goal is to consider National Register eligibility for all of Leslie Morris Park, based on a recent meeting, and we already know that there are about 20 acres of archaeological sites within the park, the context of National Register eligibility inquiry will need to expand or shift. The best approach might be to consider Fort Hill as a cultural landscape. And I admittedly did not know a lot about cultural landscapes until just a couple of weeks ago. So. NPS Preservation Brief 36, Protecting Cultural Landscapes, Planning, Treatment, and Management of Historic Landscapes by Charles A. Birnbaum, defines a cultural landscape as this: a geographic area including both cultural and natural resources and the wildlife or domestic animals therein, associated with a historic event, activity, or person exhibiting other cultural or aesthetic values. Another quote from the same brief, and I'm leaning on this heavily since it's not my area of specialty. The planning, treatment, and maintenance of cultural landscapes requires a multidisciplinary approach. In landscapes such as parks and playgrounds, battlefields, cemeteries, village greens, and agricultural land preserves, more than any other type of historic resource, communities rightly presume a sense of stewardship. It is often the grassroots commitment that has been a catalyst for current research and planning initiatives. Individual residential properties often do not require the same level of public outreach, yet a systematic planning process will assist in making educated treatment, management, and maintenance decisions. No joke, this type of nomination process will be a huge time and effort commitment, but the comprehensive knowledge that something like that we would gain from is just as much of a huge reward. There are grants available for application for National Register nomination. If the cultural landscape nomination process is successful, what a great resource to promote for Frankfort as a heritage tourism destination. The cultural landscape nomination looks at the broader patterns of history in a larger context. The successful expansion of the boundaries of the Civil War site was attributed in part to events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of our history. The cultural landscape approach may fit nicely into the preservation groundwork that has already been laid. It is good preservation practice to tell the comprehensive stories from as many different perspectives as possible. Different places mean different things to different people at different times throughout history. This approach has the benefit of looking at the relationship of Fort Hill with the city of Frankfort throughout history. I think the best argument in support of looking at Fort Hill as a cultural landscape is that throughout history, the landform has been integral to the collective cultural memory of Frankfort. That special relationship between the landscape and the community exists throughout history right up until this minute, as shown by being on this meeting's agenda. Slide 12. The fourth tool in the kit is the placement of a preservation or conservation easement, or both, on Leslie Morris Park. This tool has the potential to be the strongest preservation tool in the shed, but its real strength is that the document can be tailor-made to properly protect natural and cultural resources, how and where they need to be protected within the park, while allowing enough, or as little, flexibility for other land use in other portions of the park. Generally speaking, this tool requires that the landowner have a formal agreement with an appropriate easement holder, that a baseline survey of the park and its resources is conducted and used as the benchmark for continued maintenance and land use. Areas within the park where certain activities should be restricted due to sensitivity of a cultural or natural resource, and other areas where less or no activity or use restrictions are necessary would be laid out explicitly in the document and applied consistently for as long as the easement is stipulated to last, which for a good preservation easement is usually in perpetuity. Once the easement is executed, it will be filed with the deed for the park. Typically, the easement holder is responsible for inspecting and reporting on whether the land use restrictions and/or stipulations are being upheld, and for pursuing legal actions against the landowner should the stipulations not be upheld. The landowner maintains ownership and is responsible for upholding the requirements of the stipulations in the easement. Good things to look for in potential easement holders would be whether the agency or organization is accredited, whether they conduct regular easement inspections and generate reports on them, and whether they carry insurance on all properties for which they hold easements. Now, two more important notes on easements. An easement would lay out what the city can do and where they can do it within Leslie Morris Park. Any future modifications to those prescribed uses would require modification of the document agreeable to both the city and the easement holder. To be clear, the teeth of an easement is basically that the city would be agreeing that they will be sued if they violate the agreement. There are any number of agencies or organizations that might be appropriate easement holders for Leslie Morris Park, but an effective one will have a proven track record of easement inspections and follow through. Different organizations specialize in different types of easement and have different parameters for the resources, whether they're natural or cultural, to meet before they will consider entering into a conversation about whether they're interested in holding an easement on a particular tract of land. A quote from the webpage of Bluegrass Land Conservancy is shown here merely as an example of what an easement might involve. There are usually stewardship fees associated with this tool, both on the front end and annually. Some of the initial costs, particularly those associated with baseline documentation, might be mitigated by coordinated coordinating logistically with those doing the legwork for other preservation tools, should you decide to use them. And in some instances, organizations that serve as easement holders offer financial assistance to landowners interested in preserving significant resources for which they are stewards. This tool dovetails nicely with tools 2 and 3. Both of those tools could prove to be components of the city. A preservation conservation easement with few or no parameters of additional outside designations for the resources might be executed reasonably quickly when compared to the completion time needed for the total cultural resource designation application process. The last tool in the shed tonight is the creation or expansion of a local ordinance protecting the resources within the park. There are grant opportunities out there that prioritize the development of cultural resource management plans by local governments for cultural landscapes. So these are a few preservation tools that could be put to good use for the long-term future of Leslie Morris Park. Once these tools have been used to build a firm preservation framing for future use of the park, the knowledge these tools build will be the city's for keeping and using in perpetuity. All of the tools take into consideration the current existence and condition of the cultural resources within the park. These tools can be used independently or in partnership with one or more of the other tools to reach a variety of goals and designations. Leslie Morris Park seems to come up often in community conversations. The use of any or all of these tools, regardless of whether additional National Register status is awarded, will be a huge benefit to the community by answering recurring questions about appropriate land use at Fort Hill and in helping the park better contribute to the quality of life and economic growth for our community. So those are just a few of the tools in the shed. There's a lot of information out there. I hope this is helpful. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have if I can. If I can't, I will help put you in contact with someone better equipped to wield whatever particular tool you have a question about.
Thank you so very much for all the time you put in on Commissioner Tippett and then Commissioner Wisman.
Oh, wow, Nicole. Wow. Tons of information. Thank you
for allowing me the opportunity to.
If you would bear with me, I'd like to not regurgitate, but recapitulate some of this, okay? So, in a summary, there's more archaeology there than just Civil War sites.
Yes.
There are identified sites and unidentified sites. Correct? We don't know.
Unidentified sites? No, sir. The survey's been done. All of it has been surveyed. The report is very thorough.
Okay.
I will not say there's no chance there's another archaeological site up there because never say never. But good data suggests they're all identified.
The Antiquities Act applies.
Yes.
To the park in its entirety, right? Not just the
It applies to every bit of city and county property.
And these are statutes that are laid out by the state of Kentucky, correct? These are KRS statutes.
Yes.
Thank you. And they have penalties attached, correct? That's what I thought.
There's a penalty attached.
And one more, let's see, the midden is the historical record in the refuse in the topsoil.
I don't think it's done this too.
Right? The midden provides archaeologists with information about past human activity in the topsoil.
Yes.
And that can't be disturbed. Or it can be, but there are penalties for it, right?
It's a Class D felony.
Okay, I'm just, help me. I'm just trying to get through this. And you are classically trained archaeologists, right? You have more than one degree.
I do. I have a master's of science.
You have a master's degree, right? Thank you. And you seem to be suggesting that a conservation easement would be the best tool for the city to use. Is that what you're saying?
I'm presenting options. Like, I'm just based on comments that this commission's made and comments that the public have made in previous meetings. It depends on what your goal is for the park and its land use as to which of the tools might be best.
Thank Commissioner Westman?
Nicole, I want to thank you for putting in all this time and effort on the project. We've talked at length about this issue, and I have to give you full credit that the idea of a cultural landscape and interpreting Fort Hill as a cultural landscape with a view of all of history, even prehistoric times through current, really, as things evolve. History is so static, but the modern interpretation is ever evolving in many ways. And previously, I was referencing the archaeology that had been done already on the entirety of the 130 acres and the interpretation of Civil War heritage, and really not thinking about there's an entire Reconstruction era history that has not been interpreted yet that we might need to explore, and you came up with that idea, as well as more of the earlier history, the Blanton family, and some prehistoric elements of that. So I think you've provided us a very great way forward. I had brought up previously preservation easement on the property, which I approached the Civil War Trust to explore whether they would like to hold, but I understand they do not want to take any more easements. So I still think that's probably our best option. But you bring up a good point that we have some due diligence to continue to do and some further investigations of known sites, because they maybe have some additional resources at some of the farmstead sites that still need to be unearthed and researched further. So I think you've given us a very good path forward that doesn't necessarily exclude other activity in Fort Hill. It lets us better define the resources that we have to come up with a way to mitigate against desecration of those areas, because what we're dealing with at this point with everything being removed is all below ground resources, so it all is criteria D archaeology, if you would agree. But we still have the opportunity to create a landscape that is enjoyable and usable for our modern community and beyond, while still respecting the historic resources that are there. And I think would you say that the next steps, I suppose, would be further archaeological investigations at the farmstead sites? And could you go over some suggested actions? Put you on the spot.
What actions will be entirely up to the city. I'm happy to talk about what tools are out there, because I have fun. I would do this 24 hours a day, and it's something I enjoy. But ultimately, what tools and what timeline would be laid out and to be appropriate for this, again, would depend on the specific goals you're trying to reach. Of course, I would say, yes, let's go finish the archaeology, but that's just because I'm an archaeologist. I don't know that, that's what the goal of the city is. As far as how long each thing would take, which might also be useful, the cultural landscape nomination process would probably be a very long-term process. The easement could be done quickly, relatively quickly when compared to the cultural landscape research, but there are extenuating circumstances because the easement is dependent on what the landowner and what the easement holder agree to. So it can be done in how long it takes to reach an agreement and that everybody can live with. The archaeological site footprints, the timeline for how long something like that would take would depend on how many people you would want to throw at it. How many archaeologists. The fewer archaeologists, the longer it takes, the more archaeologists.
How many would volunteer at a time like you?
I'm not going there.
What we have is a great opportunity to do some further education of our community about the significance, as we've been in some other discussions of other historic resources in our community that we aren't so apt to jump and preserve. it's part of a larger story, and the more we find out, the more we educate ourselves, and the broader interpretive appeal is created to people that are interested specifically in these type of things. But even beyond that, to the layman that comes to visit something and suddenly discovers a resource that they didn't know existed before, and sort of is a happy surprise, if you will, if you're walking on Fort Hill and had no idea, which a great portion of the population don't know, that there were farmsteads and our Civil War fortifications and now graveyard and some other things up there, that those are all elements that can be amenities to our park system that we do need to do a better job of interpreting and promoting.
The city museum has already done this historically. That I don't know if it was affiliated with the 2013 survey or it was in addition to, but there's a framework somewhere documented that if you guys are interested in it, about how the city museum hosted the public archaeology up on Fort Hill. KAS also did that as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Waldridge and Commissioner Sauer.
So I just read the one thing that stands out to me. The combined acreage of the park is roughly 130 acres. Combined acreage of archaeology sites is 20 acres. So is that 20 acres the only amount? Is that the substance that's historic?
That is,
and then all the other 130 just happens to be a part of it?
Correct.
And would you say that using that 130 acres for other things for our community would be suitable, since only 20 acres is the blood of those soldiers we were talking about, Tippett, remember?
I don't think that's what she was saying.
How does that look for the historical value?
Based solely on historic preservation with the data available, 110 acres roughly do not have preservation concerns now. But if you were to pursue something like a cultural landscape, I do not know that the answer would remain the same.
Change.
I don't
Could
have
change.
enough information.
That's why we need a thorough investigation. And I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, that was my question. And then I think Scott was
Commissioner Sauer.
I was just going to answer or question you this way. Which one would you do first from an archaeological point of view? Would you go for the National Register on the farmstead sites, or would you go for a conservation easement, landscape easement? Which normally precedes the other?
Well, cultural landscape is more of an above ground kind of research. It's not necessarily archaeology specific. Again, it depends on your goals. If the goal is can y'all tell me what your ultimate goal is now?
We don't know.
Okay.
I'll give you, can I interject that if I were on the opposite side as the consultant, which I am quite often in some of these situations, I would say before you put a static document to hold a landscape in a certain manner for perpetuity, you want to know all history and how it's pertinent to affect the landscape. So I think what Nicole has given us is an alternative viewing of Fort Hill's significance in a much broader spectrum than we may have understood previously. And I think we should fully vet that vision before we decide any final determination. So I would say that we need to further explore the National Register nomination, and I'll agree with you, I didn't previously because I didn't think we were probably eligible, and Nicole has done a great deal of work in seeing if we may be able to morph this National Register nomination, which will take some time, but it will create a full narrative of understanding of the site that we can then hone a easement to protect the pertinent historic locations of both above ground and below ground resources that we can define more fully, and which won't preclude, for instance, adding trail systems but we can then say we have known historic sites that we want to protect in a certain manner. We want to maintain a naturalistic landscape, and thus these are the permissible activities that the city will allow in the future. That would be the process I would use or recommend or would like to see as a commissioner.
I would say one thing about the easement as opposed to the other options up there that I might not have mentioned. There are, depending on what easement holder you might choose to consider, some easements, they have, I mean, if the city as a landowner wanted to contact somebody and say, hey, we want an easement on Leslie Morris Park, and an easement, or somebody who holds easements, they may say, okay, well, if you want to place an easement on this property, then you have to define these things. They have to meet National Register criteria. They have to, and they may put stipulations on what bar the resource has to meet. But there are others that you could call them and say, I want to put an easement on Leslie Morris Park tomorrow, and you're like, okay, and you can do it. There are no bars. It just depends. So that might be something to help with that question.
Last question for me, Mayor. You mentioned the homestead sites, 2 of them.
Yes, sir.
The Edward, and I guess you're talking about the Weber Farmstead.
Yes.
As the 2. Well, the Weber Farmstead in your map seems to me to include Fort Boone. And isn't Fort Boone already National Register designated?
Yes, Fort Boone is already National Register designated. The Weber Farmstead exists partly inside the same boundary, but at a different timeline of occupation.
Right.
Okay.
And it may extend outside that boundary as well.
All right, thank you.
Just one more quick observation. Again, Nicole, thank you for that.
It was fun.
Wow, what a work product this is. It seems to me, and I'm a lay person. I love history, but we have this gemstone of a park that has multi-layered historical significance, and we don't quite know what it is we have. Right? Is that a proper way to say it?
Yes.
So it would behoove us to thoroughly investigate what's there, and that's time consuming.
It is.
And we need to know what it is before we make any kind of decision as to what use we want to have with it. I think that's, thank you, but thank you.
Thanks.
Do we need to get the staff a directive, Mayor?
We do, but City Manager wanted to say something real quick.
There's a lot of different options up there, and we're talking about investigating. I'd love to know how much this costs. I know there's grants. I'd like to know some more details about that. I'd like to get staff input. I'd like to see what the Director of Parks, maybe the Parks Board has to say. Different. I'd like to look at them all and see if there's any. That's all my only comment.
Thank you.
Mayor, I move that we direct staff to, maybe we need to include Ms. Compo in this in some way, in this motion, if she agrees to it. Architect Review Board, okay. She can't, right? She can't.
No, they're there to be a guide and an advocate for this exact purpose.
Okay.
And sitting on that, she can be a...
Okay, so help me with the wording of this motion. We want to direct staff to enter into an investigation and negotiations with finding the best instrument for us to establish a cultural landscape easement. Is that the correct wording? Nomination. Or is it a conservation easement that we want to use?
There's a conservation easement, that would be a legal process, and then there's the...
It is. Ma'am, Mayor.
Please help us, Mayor.
No, I'm happy to do so. This is something that's an area that's outside of my expertise, and Nicole has been nice enough to help me try to understand some of this, and I really appreciate it. But there's still a lot that I don't understand. Yes, the conservation easement is a legal process. It's a legal document that we would have to figure out exactly how far we want to go with that, what we want to do. You know, there are a lot of other considerations to this that we would need to look into, but I would also remind you all that we do have a current RFP that we draft that I am reviewing this week for a consultant to help us with this project. I don't know if you want to give staff direction related to your particular goals for the property. That would be really helpful, but otherwise we do have an RFP that's out there right now. So I don't know how much farther we want to go until we get somebody potentially out there to help us with the project.
Could you explain what RFP we're putting out?
You all had directed us, had asked us to hire somebody, a professional, to actually help with getting us on, I think, the National Register.
National Register, yes.
We need,
So if we want to do more, we just need something really clear that explains what you want us to do.
How about, can I speak?
sure.
If we're gonna do this RFP, let's do a feasibility as phase one, and they look at this, and they can analyze that and give us some, what we're looking at, positives, negatives, how much it's gonna cost, and let them do that first, and then we come back to you before they enter into a final decision on what to do.
And the RFP, Sean, and forgive me, because I'm not sure it's specific to the National Register, is that right?
That's right, yeah.
So I don't know if we need to open it up to further.
Yeah, it's specifically written just to write the entire 133 acres, the nomination process to be on the National Historic Site Registry.
Sure.
That's what it specifically says. It doesn't talk about a conservation easement or anything else. The way it's written now, and it's just in draft form, it has
Right.
not been released.
So we still want to pursue that, right?
Yes.
Yes, we do. We still want to
That's the
pursue
process.
that. Yes.
We don't need a directive then, except to, I don't know that we need another motion, except to say that we would like the consultant to consider a cultural landscape nomination and include our Parks Museum and Historic Sites staff, as well as members of our Architecture Review Board in the process of creating that narrative for nomination. We can come back with the results of the nomination to establish the conservation easement in the end.
So we have,
Based on the findings
so we
of
have
that.
a step-by-step process. Right. And we're creating, I'm sorry, Mary, I don't have the floor.
That's okay. I was thinking, trying to help you.
I would suggest that we have some funding offset from the cell tower that was put on Fort Hill that was the basis for this study in 2013, that we probably need to look at setting aside some of those funds as well for further archaeological investigation of the two farmstead sites, because those will inform the National Register nomination, and that will be pertinent to being able to finish that nomination based on those findings.
And I also think next year we'll have to add to the budget additional money to parks, because currently you all use that money to supplement maintenance activities at Fort Hill.
It's actually limited to Fort Hill only.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's a stipulation to
So
only be used.
we can designate it for that, but I think that would remove the money from your maintenance budget, so we'll have to address that in some form or fashion. I don't know how much this is all gonna cost. I think we need to figure that
Well,
out.
that's, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's okay. Commissioner Wolf was maybe through.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Commissioner Tibbet.
Okay.
That's what Commissioner Tibbet wanted to direct.
That's what I wanted to direct.
I knew you were gonna
An
say
investigation of the cost. We want an entire, that's not the right word. How do I want to say this, Mary, help me?
Are you looking at the feasibility and looking at conservation easement versus, and also cultural landscape?
Cultural
designation?
landscape, in addition to the first directive that we gave the staff.
Okay.
And make this a step-by-step process, where upon the completion of the first step, then the second step, which is investigating the cultural landscape possibility with the conservation easement to make it a layered approach to the decision is how the city wants to use its property.
Okay. And we could do an amended RFP if it has already been. If it hasn't
hadn't
already
been
been.
done.
We don't have to-
Oh, yeah, we're
It's-
drafting.
It's still in draft form.
So would you want to add this to the RFP?
Yes, that,
I'll defer to the legal counsel.
we can definitely add anything you all want.
Let's do that.
Just
That's the
let us-
motion. Make that an addendum to the original.
It doesn't have to be done, just be included
Yeah.
in the RFP.
Yes, including the RFP, please. That's the motion.
I'll tell you what to do. Just trying to help you.
Thank you. I'll take all the help I can get, Mayor.
Mayor Bam,
Yes.
it's as clear as
I'm
mud
sorry,
right
did you
now
just make
to
a
me
motion?
as well.
Hold on a second. Did you just make a motion?
I don't think you did, actually, but.
Give it a shot, Scott. and then we'll-
Here's what I'm saying, I want to make
Okay.
sure that I recognize you. I don't
Okay.
want to cut you off.
Yes.
Yeah, I heard you say you want to make a
I
motion. but I don't
move,
know.
I move that we include the search for cultural landscape instrument as well as the inclusion of a conservation easement into our investigation of what the city would choose to do with the property that it owns on Leslie Morris Park. Does that make sense? Clear as mud?
Why don't, Mayor, may I make a suggestion? It would be that we try to amend the RFP to include these things and let you all see it at the March work session before we put it out.
Okay. I don't think it needs to be amended because it hasn't
Or,
even.
right, not amended, I'm sorry, but
Yes, sorry.
to amend the draft
Yes.
to put before you all to make sure it's what you want.
Okay, could you maybe email that to everybody first?
Yeah.
And we'll do our best to get it in the shape that it seems like, to include the things you all want.
But I think.
So is the motion still on the
You
table?
have a motion, so is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second. All right, now discuss. So what we'll do is staff will be directed, if it's understood, so you'll, let's shake your head if you don't understand it, go like, no. If passed, it would require staff to look at adding information about a conservation easement for the entire 133 acre park
Correct.
and a cultural landscape designation for the entire park.
Correct.
And that would go into the RFP that is in the process of being written.
Correct. That's the motion, Mayor.
Okay. So you're shaking your head yes, so we got it. All right, Commissioner Wilson.
I just have a slight tweak of that cultural landscape nomination. We may find through further explorations, I think Nicole has said, that it might not be
The best,
plausible.
right,
That we maybe just need to give a directive that we would like that,
to be considered.
that criteria considered as
That's
part of
all
the
it is.
nomination.
Right.
That's all it is. It's
But not a directive of the end result.
I think
Right.
we can figure it out, and we'll make sure that before we send the RFP, out, that we have it right.
So we have a motion and a second, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Call a question.
Dave also wants to say anything?
Just a thought that, that part of that needs to be that we explore those two farmsteads archaeologically. However we can explore, which we'll need to look at some financial obligation and a bid process more than likely. Because that'll be impertinent to the nomination. It'll have to happen in tandem.
Okay. And Commissioner Waldridge.
What is our revenue? We're coming off of all these hours spent on this park and everything. Are we making revenue off of it, or what is our main goal? I'm so confused, and
Okay. That's why we ask questions.
I'm just confused. I'm sure the community is too, and oh my gosh, this just, I appreciate her work because she actually makes me understand it, because I'm not an archaeologist, but in all of this of history, we're trying to save this hill and what portion of it, and can we do other things with the ones that is not historical, and I just feel like we're doing so much for 20 acres of historic. Will that be something we can define, and can we use the other property for something else, or does that fall into place and hurt the other 20 acres? I'm sorry, I'm for trails, and this is just so tiring right now. So.
Do any of our financial staff, Angie, do you have the information in front of you that shows what our annual revenue off of the cell tower is by any chance?
And if we do this, will this increase our traffic up there? Is that more people to come in? Like, what,
Mayor,
could I
since
have
she's
just a little bit of understanding on that?
We're going to let Angie, then
That'd be great.
Commissioner Westman.
As far as the actual revenue goes for Fort Hill, we only collect the tower rental, which is between about $1,600 and $1,700 a month on that right now.
Okay.
But that goes straight into the Fort Hill account
Right.
for Fort Hill. But other than that, we really don't have any revenue that's coming to this.
Mayor, I'm sorry, are you next?
Commissioner Wilson is next. Or if you want to yield, Commissioner.
I'll yield.
Thank you, Commissioner. The problem with generating revenue at Leslie Morris Park is it's essentially landlocked. Okay? Neighborhoods surround it in its entirety. So getting to it is difficult, okay, for the city to have any kind of revenue generating activities. Also, we've just learned that the Military Road, okay, which comes down behind the project, the old projects there, is on the National Historic Register. So that would preclude anything but hikers going up that road.
Can we we're going to take a quick recess if you'll
Sure, Mayor.
For 5 minutes.
Can we get past this vote?
Yeah, let's take this vote, Mayor. Can we do that?
Question has already been called for.
Yeah, the question's been called.
Okay. All right, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Waldridge?
No.
No. Commissioner Tippett?
Yes.
Commissioner Wissman?
Yes.
Commissioner Sauer?
Yes.
Mayor May, yes. Passes 4-1. We'll take no objections.
5 minutes, Mayor.
5-minute recess.
Recess.
Okay.
All right, we're going to call back into session. All members are present. I guess, but wait a minute. Sorry, the staff doesn't want us to work yet. All right, next item would be consent calendar.
All right. Item 1 is approval of the minutes from the January 13th work session and the January 27th regular meeting. Item 2 is approval to submit a grant application to send staff to the National Preservation Conference. A match of $2,000 will be required in FY 2021 if approved. Item 3 has been moved to action item 9. Item 4 has been moved to action item 10. Item 5 has been removed. Item 6 is approval to reassign the existing contract with Tetra Tech to Stantec Consulting. The contract is for engineering consulting services related to the city's MS4 program and permit. Item 7 is approval of a contract with McLean's Mowing Service to provide mowing services for the planning department. McLean's was the low bid for the project. Item 8 is approval of amendment number 2 for the Two Creeks Upper and Blanton Acres I&I reduction project in the amount of $29,305. Item 9 is personnel actions. First one is a transfer of Ernie Howard, Public Works, to Solid Waste effective February 4th, 2020. Position is Public Works Tech 3. Appointment of Alicia Barnes, Police Department effective February 4th, 2020, Patrol Officer. Appointment of Bruce Smith, Public Works Transit effective February 18th, 2020, Transit Driver. Resignation of Jennifer Jenkins, Finance effective February 20th, 2020, Finance Director. Authorized payout of accrued leave. Also permission to make one conditional offer of appointment and one alternate conditional offer of employment for the position of firefighter EMT recruit. The request to make these conditional offers of employment is contingent upon successful completion of background medical, psychological, polygraph, and drug screening examinations by each candidate.
Move that we approve.
Moved by Commissioner Sauer.
Second.
By Commissioner Waldridge. All members who designated their presence and will be considered to vote in affirmative on the consent calendar items unless they file vote modification once with the city clerk. I don't believe we have any. Thank you very much. Those items are adopted. Next on reaction items versus second reading. Ordinances. First one, I would ask that the solicitor read it by title and summary only, please.
An ordinance rezoning property located near the intersection of Derbyshire Circle and Riverbend Road with the address of 101 Derbyshire Circle and containing .85 acres, more specifically described as PVA map number 048-0000030.03 from planned commercial district to low density multifamily district.
Move that we approve.
We got one more
Gotta read the
section. That was good, quick.
Good job.
Appreciate it.
That was the second reading.
This ordinance approves a zone map amendment for the .85 acre property located at the intersection of Derbyshire Circle and Riverbend Road with the address of 101 Derbyshire Circle, more specifically described as PVA map number 048-0000030.03 from Planned Commercial District PC to Low Density Multifamily District RL.
Okay, now.
Now we move to approve.
Yes, thank you. Motion by Commissioner Sowers.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wisman. Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call roll.
Mr. Waldridge?
Yes.
Mr. Tippett?
Yes.
Mr. Wisman?
Yes.
Mr. Sauer?
Yes.
Mayor May?
Yes, I've adopted. Next, I will be second reading of item number 2 by title.
An ordinance amending the City of Frankfort Code of Ordinances, Section 37.33, relating to mayor and commission salary rates. This ordinance amends Section 37.33 of the City of Frankfort Code of Ordinances to reflect the salaries of city elected officials as of July 1st, 2019, and clarify that salaries of city elected officials shall be annually adjusted by the lesser of the annual salary adjustment granted to city employees in Ordinance 37.38, or the increase in the Consumer Price Index for the previous year as calculated by the Kentucky Department for Local Government.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Tippett. I don't know who was first on that. I'll look, since I heard Commissioner Waldridge, since she was right next to me, I'll be the second.
Okay.
Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call roll.
Mr. Waldridge?
Yes.
Mr. Tippett?
Yes.
Mr. Wisman?
Yes.
Mr. Sauer?
No.
Mayor May?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I had to think for a second. I wonder why he voted no. Just kidding. Next would be second reading of item number 3. Yes. As we read by title, summary only, please.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 9, 2019 series, appropriating the revenue to be received by the City of Frankfort for the fiscal year 2019-20. This ordinance amends the 2019-20 budget to provide money for the City of Frankfort to fund the following: 2019 Downtown Revitalization Grant, $100,000. Fire Training Grant, $13,000. FIS Reimbursement 2017 Contract, $34,303. Humane Society Building Study, $26,463. Women's Shelter, $10,000. Lump sum contribution of sick leave for retired employees to KRS and not included in budget, $154,346. New ambulance engine, $32,000. Purchase and upfitting of 2 vehicles and cost to transfer usable equipment to existing 2017 Explorers, $66,924. Dolly Graham Park renovation project, $500,000. Pedestrian bridge over Benson at Riverview Park safety structural inspection, $15,000. Field lighting to Legends and Williams Field, Capitol View Park, $10,000. Increase in downtown reinvestment grant, $50,000. Increase in neighborhood reinvestment grant, $22,000. Concert stage and associated costs, $125,000. Parks master plan, $125,000. Sourfields lighting, $485,000. Thoroughbred trail, $232,476. And unanticipated revenues, $946,629. Total 2019-2020 budget amendment is $1,054,833.
Move to approve, Mayor.
Moved by Commissioner Tippett.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Sauer. Commissioner Waldridge, question.
For the new ambulance engine, may I ask the fire chief? I don't have that information that you've given us quite some time, but the $32,000, is that for the full price of the engine, or is that a portion we're paying for the engine?
That is full price installed.
Full price for the engine and installed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. My other may I?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I had a couple of questions. Also, the field lighting for the Legends and the Williams Field for Capitol View Park, Sean, which is at $10,000, is, sorry.
He's a man of the hour. Yes, ma'am.
For those fields, the names of the fields, please help me in picturing those 2 fields.
When you're coming into the park and you're driving towards the Sauer complex, it's the 2 fields before you get to the Sauer soccer complex.
Okay, so that does not include the 2 lower fields?
It does not.
And what do we need to do about those? That's my question, that those are not added in. We have so many lights here, and our students at the middle school and different are getting ready to start playing on those fields, and we have people, the lights are not working for them to have evening, and we cannot cancel games because we don't have lights. So I need to make sure we're looking into that so we can get that started before their games start.
Right.
Okay. Just wanted to see where that money, which fields those were going, but we need to work on
Yeah,
those
what's
too.
specifically in the budget is for
Uh-huh.
the Legends and Williams, which is up,
Okay,
which is up top there.
okay. I appreciate that.
Yep.
And then the Thoroughbred Trail, I guess that's used too, Sean, I'm sorry. I don't know, sort of, kind of, maybe you could answer.
It's kind of public works.
Yeah, this amount, is this amount to say that we can go ahead and get started and we can break ground to move forward now and we're not waiting on any other things once this is approved?
I'll speak to that.
Okay, that'd be great.
This amount is roughly a third of the cost of the trail project. We anticipate approval pretty soon from the Transportation Cabinet, and we think we've got enough time to bid this out and get started. We wanted to make sure we had enough money to, if we did get the bid out before July 1, we could do some work.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's all my questions.
All right. No other questions? Clerk, please call roll.
Mr. Waldridge?
Yes.
Mr. Tippett?
Yes.
Mr. Wissman?
Yes.
Mr. Sauer?
Yes.
Mayor May?
Yes, items adopted. Next would be number 4, surplus Ford transit buses. This is in order. This is for 24x2 cutaway buses and authorizes signature to complete. If there's any questions, we have staff here. If not, we'll entertain a motion to.
Mayor, question.
Commissioner Wissman.
I'd asked staff previously, I wondered if we had an answer. I talked to the name has completely left me, our elderly center, about using.
Marshall Jenkins.
Yes, Marshall, about using one of the surplus buses for helping them transport people to and from the center. She had said that she had not talked to staff about that, but I want to make sure we reach out to some of the community organizations that may be able to use these. If we surplus now, we can still then offer those. Is that correct to community organizations? Rebecca, do you know? Or do we have to do that before we surplus?
There is a process to go through. I think that we can go ahead and surplus them, and then we could, the organization would need a request from the actual Office of Transportation and Delivery. Since the money came from federal funds, we don't get to make that decision. They make the decision, and they would have to demonstrate that they would take some of the stress off of our system in order to donate those to any organization. And I will say, in the last couple of years, there have been less and less of those because there are no more toll credits. So they would rather that money go back into our coffers so we can offset our capital expenditures. But we can ask.
Specifically, the Senior Citizen Center, Marshall was telling me that they're providing 700 plus rides a month, and their ridership is going up. And some recent complications with our bus routes have saw them maybe increasing their ridership, and they are more malleable to directly relate to the needs of some of the senior citizens, that they may be able to use one of these buses. And I would like to make that happen if we can assist them. So if we can approve this and then request staff work with the Senior Citizen Center and maybe some other community organizations directly, but I know obviously their actions would alleviate some of our ridership directly and would be amenable to the program.
I'm sorry, Mayor, may I?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Their ridership is probably going to increase by at least 2 in January 2021.
No.
3?
No.
No?
The new 40.
Oh, new 40, that's right. 60 is a new 40.
I move that we approve.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Walter, second by Commissioner Westman. Any discussion?
Mayor,
Commissioner.
we have a surplus order on that, and I'm trying to pull it up. That actually is very specific as required by state law, so we may need to do an amendment to the surplus order.
Okay, because it says allocate the revenue to the account.
Yes.
Is that what you're going to say?
Yes, so if we could pass over this for a second and let me look at it to.
Are we on 4, Mayor?
We're on 4.
There's something to where the money's going back.
Because the order of the motion.
I'll rescind my second.
It's right here. Oh, great. Or if you all would give me 1 second here.
Maybe.
Present be surplus, authorizes the property be transferred to emergency.
Yeah, it's got a couple of things that we may have to alter.
Can we?
They're laughing because they heard me when I said
Can we
it.
pass over?
Can we consider it at next work session? Does that make any difference?
Don't know. Oh, there's Katie.
Is it time sensitive, Rebecca?
I don't think so. I think so,
I don't see it.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's pass over.
Let's pass over.
Be ready
Okay,
for the next session.
That'd be great. That's
Thank you.
easier, cleaner.
Is it?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being
Okay.
flexible, guys.
So did somebody withdraw
All right,
their
rescind.
rescind second? Okay. In the
Yes,
motion.
he rescinded his second.
Thank you all. And somebody just take the motion back too, just so we get that off the table.
So we're
too.
just rescinding?
Rescinding the motion
So make a motion.
due to the verbiage of
Yeah, contrition.
the account.
Okay.
All right. All right, next item, street department surplus vehicles, it's, and equipment, and it's in order. So if there's any questions on this, we'll take those. If not, we'll ask for approval.
Move to approve.
Moved by Commissioner Listman, second by Commissioner Tippett. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, vote yes or no. I was gonna do a voice vote.
Okay.
She's got it down like that, but I don't know.
I'll do a voice vote.
No,
All
it's
those in-
totally up to you.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, like sign. All right, it's adopted. Next item was an order for surplus property for the police department. If there's any questions on this, we'll answer. If not, we'll entertain a motion to.
Move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Wiseman, second by Commissioner Waldridge. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign. All right, that's adopted. Next item, number 7, downtown reinvestment task force recommendation for grants. And there's various grants in here. We can go to this if need be. If not, why don't you-
I'd like to divide these out into the three, Mayor. And actually, I have a question as well. We did not receive any scoring criteria. I would have liked to have reviewed that. So actually, I'd like to pass over until such time we can.
Well, with that delay, that's going to delay some
I
of the
don't know
work
if
on
that
some of these.
will be
Correct.
I'm not certain when the projects are beginning.
I know the firehouse is in the process. The 315 West Main Street, I'm not sure.
Point of order, Mayor, question.
Was built when?
Commissioner Tippett?
So help me, Commissioner Wiseman is actually wanting to divide these three out into separate votes, is that correct?
I believe, oh my God, this is really.
Will we take them in order if we do that? I guess my question is, how does that work procedurally?
We can break that apart. So the first one is 50,000 for the owners of 104 to 112 Broadway, it's the Broadway Building LLC. Second one is 30,000 to property owners at 215 West Main Street, Peach Properties Commercial LLC. And the last is 20,000 to the property owners at 307, 309 West Main Street, Firehouse Investments LLC.
So you're looking for a motion for the first grant, is that correct, Mayor?
It is your all's pleasure.
Could I maybe ask a
Commissioner Wiseman.
question? I would have liked to review these a little bit more. My concern is one of these properties was built in the 90s, and the intent of this program was to alleviate undue costs from long languishing, sort of deferred maintenance and otherwise. So I'm concerned about awarding funds to a fairly new property when those funds may go further with.
The downtown reinvestment grant is actually for historic or brand new construction. So that's not in the criteria. The criteria we brought to you guys in
Right.
August or September when we brought the historic preservation grant criteria.
How many people applied?
3.
How many were awarded?
3.
I move that we accept
All three?
All three?
all 3 together.
Second, Mayor.
Moved by Commissioner Wallace, second by Commissioner Tippett. Now is there any discussion? All right, if not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay?
Nay,
We have a nay, we have one nay. Please record one nay, please.
for the reason expressed.
Did you want, you can explain your vote.
Which one was it?
Just for the
I
reason
thought he just
expressed.
did the 90s. Is that the only reason? Because it's a fairly newer building in the
It's
90s, but it's in the.
a new building in good condition, and without seeing a development plan, I wonder where those funds are going to be used most effectively when they may better serve another one of these buildings.
When you say that, are you saying that that you would rather that person not use the funds for the 90s building and for them to sit back and wait and have other applications come in again? If there was only 3 and we rewarded 3, where should that money go?
I don't know without seeing the applications more fully, so I won't say that. I don't know that I have an opinion. That was just a concern.
All right, next item would be.
It's over.
Next item would be Franklin County Humane Society resolution. This is for adopting the resolution. So if there's any questions, we'll answer. If not, entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
Point of order, Mayor.
Commissioner Tippett.
It's not required that we read the resolution.
No, it is
We
not.
just adopt it.
Is this adopted?
Move to adopt, Mayor.
Moved by Commissioner Tippett.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wiseman. Any discussion? Commissioner Sauer, did you want to?
I'll explain my vote.
Okay.
Get to me.
Do y'all want to do a roll call on it then?
No.
Okay.
Question, Mayor. This is just validating what we've already done and to
Right, it
provide
requires us to
the
actually do a
the
resolution.
Humane Society a formal expression of our intent.
Correct.
That's
It's
right.
pledging the commitment
And
for $1 million.
Mayor, if I may
Go ahead.
add, just, we have passed along the resolution to Mr. Marcus, who has seen the language and is okay with it, I believe he indicated. And it basically does just confirm that we will deliver the money when the other funds are present, and we're going forward, that's all.
Commissioner Walsh.
In giving such a huge amount to the Humane Society, is there anyone on our staff that sits on that board or attends those meetings for us to have a say in such a huge amount being asked from the city?
We do have a city representative. I don't know who that is at this time. I'm sure May would have that, probably. Do you know who it is? You can tell.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, lovely lady.
Okay.
I didn't hear.
Let the
did not know that.
record reflect that Mr. Marcus with the Humane Society said it was
Kiana.
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 K-E-E-U-N-A.
And where, I'm sorry, where does she work?
Yeah.
What area does she work in?
Oh, I
She
don't
was a
She's not an
student. She
I
was a
think she's an
student.
appointee, but not an employee, is that right?
She's an appointee, city representative.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
There's a history behind those appointments, but you may not want to get into that.
That's
No,
okay.
thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, I'm going to ask for a roll call. Clerk, please call roll.
Okay. Commissioner Waldridge?
And we're just doing the 1 million. What about the whole property and everything? The property of the 250, it's not on here. And and I said that if we move forward with that, I would not want our staff to be recommended to do in-kind donations because my limit
This
was
is
really,
prior- yes, this is-
it's 500 to 750. And
This
we've
is for
moved it up
fun.
with no questions.
This is
And I'm just
100
seeing that.
Or, I'm sorry, 1 million to go specifically, this is solely for the 1 million to go specifically toward the facility.
And they can still come back
The construction.
but the property we're doing
Separate.
There's a resolution that you all have already committed to.
for the property
On the property,
and in-kind donations.
yeah. In-kind is not involved in either one of these resolutions.
And it will not be brought to our table again with the Humane Society ask for in-kind donations that will then make this greater.
If there's a request, you will have to approve it for in-kind donation.
That's right.
It is your all's prerogative. We do not have a formal request, but we've looked at the site with the county, but any kind of request for
I'm being real
in-kind,
lenient because we're in a roll call, but I'm letting it go. Because I want it, no, I'm saying, like, I want everybody to get it. I think it's important to get it out. So if everybody's working well together, so as long as we do, we're going to be flexible.
any in-kind request will have to come back before this board. So you'll have a chance to say yes.
And do you feel that $1 million toward the animal shelter is the way to go as far as this is concerned and written up in our budget in due time?
I think the donation of property and the $1 million cash is enough. But that is
And
your all's
because that's what I
prerogative.
was- Okay.
But that is totally your all's decision.
Okay. Yes.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner, Commissioner Tippett?
Yes.
Commissioner Wiseman?
Yes.
Commissioner Sauer?
Mayor, you counseled me once before about, do I explain my vote and then vote, or do
Well,
I
we should vote first, but because I just let Commissioner Waldridge
I'm
ask
sorry.
questions, and I said I want to be, because this is an important thing, and I think sometimes everybody's playing fair and nice, so go ahead and ask your question if you'd like.
Okay,
Or
well, I
explain.
don't have a question, just my explanation is
Okay.
I offered the idea of 400,000 and 400,000, and then we're saving infrastructure costs of up to 250,000 by the location of the site, and that's not including the value of the land. So bottom line is, $1 million in cash was a little bit a bridge too far. I vote no.
Mayor May?
Yes. Passes 4-1. All right, next we have number 9, which was number 3 on the consent calendar. It's the solid waste disposal recycled materials transportation bid award. This is just for hauling solid waste. Recyclable are stored at the recycle center until such time as they're ready to be transported. And so this only affects the transportation. There can also be a future review of where our recyclables are hauled. But I know if you have questions, please ask.
Yes, Mayor.
Commissioner Wisman.
While we had our break, I just wanted to ask Katie to verify the contract that we're looking at has a clause that we're able to manipulate in any way we want. If we want to send something to Lexington or Louisville to address the changing markets or week-to-week activities of one of these markets, but more so, you're needing tonight the transportation of trash to the landfill. But the contract, and I was asking Laura, will allow us to manipulate and change at any point in time that we have. So if we approve this tonight, we can continue with the landfill contract and still manipulate to have other options for recyclables if need be. Can you all
Do you want to start, Katie?
speak to that?
So part of your question, we did bid them all together just for simplicity's sake, and we thought we would get better prices that way. That's why they are lumped together. Both the recycling hauling and trash hauling have both expired. We're month by month at this point, so I would like to move forward. And the question for Laura is, can we then change our recycling? Because the way this is set up, we can change between Lexington and Westrock, but can we change our recycling hauler if we accept this?
So the issue with the contract as it currently is written, we bid in a particular manner with particular specs for both the solid waste hauling and the recycling. If we alter significantly the recycling portion of the contract, then we may have an issue with the bidding because we don't know if others might have changed their bid amounts had they known. So that's the bit of the issue there. Our contract that we have before us tonight with Republic for both services does have a 15-day notice provision that we could give them for termination. It's kind of strange to be talking about termination in the same sentence that you're talking about accepting their contract. But I think if we're going to move forward with both services, we let them know, put them on notice that we are considering a lot of options and things may change. It is not likely that we could change this particular contract significantly without going back out to bid. But we could at the very least go forward and let them be notified that we may have to rebid or change our process.
For the recyclables?
Yes, for the recyclables.
But
For the whole thing, actually.
Dynamic shift, we have a 15-day out and then we can rebid at any point in time.
That's
what
right.
you're
That's
stating.
right.
Okay, if you look at, there's 2 section 3s. The first one is roll-off box. The second section 3 is transportation services for recyclable materials. On page 1 of the contract. You want to review that real quick? You may.
There's a typographical.
It's a typo.
Yeah.
Just that the number
Second
just needs to
section
be
3 should be
remembered.
4.
We are looking at the contract.
And this is based on the copy that we have. Their other contract may have been updated since this was added to our
Oh, we have 2 number 3s. We'll
Yeah.
fix that.
Right.
We'll fix that.
Mayor, if I may, in our tour of the Louisville facility, the rate per ton of recyclables is actually less than what we'll be accepting tonight for landfilling, and the hauling increase is only about $4,000 a year, which may significantly outweigh the amount of trash we're sending to the landfill currently by expanding significantly our recyclable program. So in the end, I think we have an option, and I hope we have a directive soon to begin shipping an entirely revamped recycling program for Frankfort and shipping all those goods to Louisville. I was very impressed by the facility, and if anyone hasn't been or has questions, I would encourage them to go check it out. It is, without going to Ohio, our best option, I believe, at the moment. But if we've learned anything in the last month or few months, that we need to be malleable to the changing markets that are going to be a way of life for the foreseeable future. So I think we have something we can work with for the time being, at least to get some programs up and going. So with that, I will move to approve.
Are we still in discussion, Mayor?
Well, he made a motion, so
I'm sorry, that's fine.
do that.
That's fine.
And then you can have more discussion.
I just had a question.
It's okay. Moved by Commissioner Wiseman,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner.
So now we're in discussion,
Go ahead,
right?
Commissioner, and then the city manager needs to say something.
I would just like to ask the city manager, is there any chance in the future, on the horizon, for us to have our own facility for recycling? And can we make it profitable if we do something like that?
I would say it's very unlikely we could be profitable in recycling. It's just the bulk and the separation process, single stream recycling. I'd be surprised. I think what we need to do is approve this contract, and most of our hauling is to the landfill, correct? The recycling is what percentage of the hauling?
I'm sorry, I don't know exactly. off
But
the
wouldn't you
top
say
of
most
my
of
head,
it
but
is hauling to
I
the
would
landfill?
say generally we take more to the landfill. That's
So,
totally fair at this point.
I think we analyzed this, some new information that came tonight, and we'll put something in writing for y'all to review at the next work session. We can explain the cost benefits of each one, and
I would like an analysis for us
And
to review.
just one more question, Mayor, if I may.
Go ahead.
The economics of recycling in this current market are just not good anywhere. Correct?
yeah, we used to make more money on recycling.
Right.
Lexington would pay; they would take all of our recyclables and pay us more. And over time, they've stopped paying as much. They stopped taking as much, and the market has.
And they only, I'm sorry, Mr. City Manager, but they only accept the items that they can make a profit on.
Yeah, they're not taking things that they know they'll have to haul to the landfill. But I would say there's certain days they haul stuff to the landfill just because they can't take it.
If I may, Mayor, in touring that facility recently, the biggest problem with Lexington is that they have equipment that was installed 20 years ago and is not able to sort the materials in the way that need to be to meet the current markets. Louisville has just invested multi-million dollars into a sorting facility and new mechanical equipment that is completely the difference between the two facilities. From what I saw in touring, I think short of having our community sort to a T everything and us be able to take those raw goods and sell directly, there's no way that we can ever even dream of having a recycling facility here for our size of community. I think the best option is currently to go with the Louisville facility and hope that the markets come back so that there is some profit margin for recyclables. But currently, it doesn't look to be that there's any opportunity for that on the horizon, at least in the near future.
Good. Do you know if we leave Lexington's program, if they'd allow us back, if things change in the future? Have they ever indicated otherwise?
I think that they would. They have been very reasonable and flexible, and they've made statements to that effect. Nothing in writing, which we could do, but I think they'd be open to that.
They also indicated that in our tour that we could have a hybrid system where we're shipping things to two different places, and we can be malleable to whatever the market bears. If for some reason one stops with some item, we may be able to split and send to different places.
Mayor, just one last question. Republic Services of Kentucky, is the previous or the current
They are.
contract holder. Thank you
Yes.
very much. Call for question.
All right, although, any other questions? If not, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, like sign. All right, that item is approved. I gotta get back to where I was.
We're on 10, right?
Right, which was number 4.
4, yeah, which was consent agenda item 4.
It's contractor for the two-way Main Street conversion project. This is in the amount of $65,185. Since it was pulled off consent, other questions?
Nah,
No?
I've said what I need to say.
If this happens, I had a question. If this happens not to be in the best favor, we can see this within a year's time of working this two-way main. What would be the cost of switching it back? What would be the issues of switching it back if we did foresee any issues?
How much of this contract was a signal? Do you remember?
Can
14,000,
look
I
it up.
believe.
14,000.
That sounds.
And then 1,500 for the arm or part of it.
The pole was
So I
additional.
would assume minus 14,000, you still have to demo that signal, but, so you may be able to take 15,000 off of the current bid. That's what it'd take to go back maybe for signage. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good estimate. And I would also say that I would leave it open to a phase 2 if it wasn't working well and there were some simple things that we could do to improve it and leave it two-way. That
So
might be an option too.
If you have somebody running up on a curb or something,
Right.
we'll modify them as we see fit instead of doing it in the field.
Mayor, I move that we approve the contract.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Sauer, second by Commissioner Wiseman. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Waldridge?
Yes.
Mr. Tippett?
I'm going to vote no, and I may explain my vote, Mayor.
You may.
I've already alluded to it in the citizens' comments by Mr. Cole. I think you have to create the conditions for economic growth. And this board generally deserves credit for trying their very best to do that. I think, after I have pondered this for a long time, I'm not opposed to two-way main in theory. It's just, it would seem to me that it would be a natural outgrowth of economic activity before we would do something like that. So I still think we need to focus our energies on parcel B and C and get that right. And then in the natural progression of order, we might need to make two-way main viable for the entrance into the city. But I'm voting no this time.
Commissioner Wiseman?
Yes.
Mr. Sauer?
We've studied this project to death. We've finally come up with a solution that is supported by, it looks like, a majority, and I vote yes.
Mayor May?
I'm going to vote yes because this is not on whether Main Street becomes two ways. This is for a contractor that is going to provide services for the project. Okay. Next item, new business.
Mayor, I have something. Bobby? Can you do the other slide? That's the side view. Yeah, please. This property is 216 Murray Street. It is owned by the First Corinthian Baptist Church, and my good friend Reverend Les Whitlock is the pastor there. He has a bold vision for South Frankfort, and it is a bold vision. He wants to create a community life center on about an acre plot of land behind the church. He can't begin a capital campaign, the church can't begin a capital campaign until that structure is disposed of. And he, time is just critical for the capital campaign. And in my humble opinion, his vision for what could go in there it just provides myriad benefits for the community, school-age children, indigent folks, and this structure is caught up in, our policies. It's a quagmire, and I'm not saying that it's our policies are bad. I'm just saying, in this particular instance, we should expedite this project, allow the church to begin their capital campaign by the city approving a permit to raise this structure, so they can begin their capital campaign and start building this community life center, which would be a tremendous benefit not only to the kids and the folks of South Frankfort, but to the community as a whole. So I encourage my colleagues to join me in this effort to help the First Corinthian Baptist Church and the good folks there. And we team this project of the Community Life Center with the new Dolly Graham splash pad, and we have improved our community immeasurably. And we've invested in a community that's had a dearth of investment for hundreds of years. So I know staff is working hard and diligently on trying to get this thing through the bureaucracy, but it's a quagmire. So yes, so I'm just trying to suggest that we fast track this, and let's let the church continue their good work. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Commissioner?
I just would like to respond to that. I've seen the plans that the church have, and I agree they're well-founded and agreeable and would be good for the community. But Commissioner Tippett, I'm utterly appalled that you would try to circumvent the process to remove a building that's National Register contributing, listed on them in the local preservation district, after having such robust discussions about Fort Hill and preserving that site, that we want to circumvent our processes, and not one but two but three boards, in fact, to help alleviate an obstacle that in fact could be potentially incorporated into a project. I'm not finished. There is option that this building could be moved. I adamantly oppose that it will ever be torn down. It's in good condition, and it would be complete and utter shortcutting of all of the processes that we have put forward as a city to preserve our historic resources. I do agree that it would make space for the church to build their life center, that it could be best to be moved possibly just across the street, because there is a facility for that. And I'd actually like for us to explore in that manner, possibly helping the church to move this building to another site directly adjacent, so we still retain some of the historic integrity without losing a structure needlessly to demolition.
Thank you. Ma'am, Mayor, are you finished? Yes. First of all, Commissioner, I did not say circumvent, I said expedite. Okay? And I won't take umbrage at the fact that you, of all people, are calling me a vacillator or a flip-flopper. Oh my gosh. We had to drag you to the Fort Hill thing, because quite frankly, you're defending bike paths. So, you can't have your cake and eat it too, sir. Okay? Now, I'm gonna come back and say the community, however, and by the way, Ms. Steinhauser tried like the devil to get that thing moved and couldn't because of the FEMA floodplain. They can't move it. There's no place to put it. Okay? So what I'm saying is the good to community far outweighs in this instance, the good of the community of letting these folks do what they want to do far outweighs the value of this one piece of property. And if we want to move it, somebody please tell us where we can move it and absorb the cost. Thanks, Mayor.
Do we have a motion on the floor?
No, I was just,
Okay.
But Commissioner Waldridge was next.
I'm sorry, Commissioner. I interrupted you.
Oh, no, that's all right.
No, no. It's okay.
I completely agree, as I have spoken with Pastor as well, and on several occasions, I think he has a great idea. To be quite frank, Mr. Wissman, I understand you're a historian and you want to save everything, but Frankfort is at a stage now we have to move forward and we can't keep everything that's historic. If that was the case, we wouldn't be driving down half the roads that we have or over the bridges we have and all of this other stuff. So I understand that's where you come from, but we can't just save everything because if I'm not mistaken, isn't your building too far from here? And there's some issues with your building as well, that there's a door that opens up that if someone was to get in your building and walk out, it doesn't have stairs to go down. So I think that there are some issues in this area, let alone with the building that you have some say on as well. So I don't understand why we push out. And furthermore, I'm not sure why every single time that Dolly Graham Park or this particular part of the neighborhood, we are trying to improve it and we're trying to do better for that community. But you have an issue with Dolly Graham Park. You have an issue with making something better for those children. And you have an issue, let's just go further, all the time with Wandale Robinson getting his sign. So I'd really like to get down to it on what is the real issue that you have in helping this community better itself, better the children, and giving Wandale a sign in this area, because the common denominator is African American to me. And I'm becoming very offended by it. So if you can explain it and work that out for me, I would love it, because it's becoming offensive to me.
Mayor.
And why you don't want to better this area in this community.
Mayor, I would move we direct staff to look at all available options on this property and report back to us at the next work session.
Okay, it's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Tippett. All right, now discussion. Any discussion?
I think we've said enough.
Yeah, we've said more than enough. Yeah, I agree with you, Commissioner. We said way too much.
And just so you know, we did look, this is a project that we have been working on for the last, I think, 3 or so years, and we've had some meetings. Commissioner Tippett and I had met with staff and folks from the community to try to move forward, and the problem, of course, is trying to figure out what to do with that property. And as somebody, did you say, our former city manager talked about trying to move it?
Right.
We did, because that was one of the first things that we tried to do. But anyway, if there's no other further questions, clerk, please call roll.
Mr. Waldridge?
So we're voting on, I'm sorry, we're
Can we
voting on,
reiterate
All
the motion?
available options for staff
Yes.
to
To move
explore.
forward.
all
voting on the
available
direct, we're voting on the
We
direct.
gave staff a month, correct? To
To
review all options for this property.
this property.
Yes.
Right.
In the past.
Yes.
Yes.
At the work session?
March work session, I think, was that the motion?
Yes.
Oh,
March
that's
work
really,
session.
We can
okay, we can do it.
Well, that, yeah.
Good.
Okay, I'm sorry, I thought it was a month.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was thinking, trying to
Okay, so
reread
9
that in my
months
head.
for the
but-
next, for the
Figuring
work.
they'll take a little bit of time to explore all those options.
Yes. Okay, all right,
Yes, with no delay.
no delay. Okay. So you're saying yes?
I am saying yes.
Okay. Commissioner Tippett?
Yes.
Mr. Wissman?
Yes.
Commissioner Sauer?
Yes.
Mayor May?
Yes, motion is adopted. Is there any other new business?
Are we still under new
Still under
business?
new business.
Just checking. I have one new business. Ms. Fields, would you please come forward? I noticed in reading the Frankfort update that the HR staff will be participating in the Frankfort Jobs Fair at Paul Sawyer Library on March the 3rd. I thought Ms. Fields might explain a little further about that, what time it starts, as well as what job openings the city currently has.
We've done an excellent job highlighting it. It is indeed next Tuesday at the library from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. A few members of the HR team will be there to not only make those interested aware of current job opportunities. We currently have a full-time opportunity in our finance department, and then we've got a ton of part-time and seasonal opportunities because we're ramping up for Parks and Rec. We're also looking for part-time and seasonal transit drivers. But in addition to those opportunities, we just want to make any candidate interested in the variety of job opportunities that the city of Frankfort offers, even if we don't have a current position now. For example, we'll want to try to touch on police and fire opportunities, which do, that's what I'm looking for. They have a set window when they're taking applications. So they're not currently in those windows, but we want to make people aware of those opportunities.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other new business?
Yes.
Commissioner Waldridge.
Keith, I really am concerned about the our middle schoolers playing ball on, and Sean, sorry, I'm bringing that back up because I would really like for staff to move forward on how we can get the lights fixed, or can we think about that, and is that something we need to do? Their season is right around the corner, and to keep them from not being able to finish games because it gets dark down there and things of that nature, we really do need to take that in consideration.
I'll review that with Mr. Pickens and see.
Okay.
I'm not sure the condition of those fields.
That's where.
I don't know. I don't know if you need to come up. Just that, just the
Yeah.
directive is just to try to just expedite that.
That's where Bondred and-
You were never a track runner, were you?
To be honest, all of the lights at Capitol View are in pretty rough shape.
Right.
So, I mean, Sauer Fields are in rough shape, but so are Legends of Williams and Pewitt and Sullivan. Which Pewitt and Sullivan are the two lower fields closest to the east-west connector in the bottom, if you want to call it that.
So what about the fields
there a
that
way
the
we can
schools
have
play on?
mobile lights that can come in, or is that an option to save money?
I
versus-
looked at that option back at the end of last fall when we were having issues on Legends and Williams with
Okay.
softball. And I didn't find any in the local. I think I might have gotten with Tommy on that, and he didn't know of any of portable lights that we could use temporarily. But yeah, at the end of the season, Pewitt and Sullivan were working okay, but all it takes is a storm or two,
Right.
and the wiring is 40 years old, and a rat could be chewing on it right now and cause an issue. I mean, it's just really hard to tell. They're all in rough shape.
Would you say your general operating budget, I see you had 10,000 for the other two softball fields. You may be able to handle some routine maintenance.
Yeah.
Once you get them, just go on and inspect those, kick them on, see if there's anything we can do while we're working on the other fields.
Yeah, and the 10,000 for the other two fields, that's really just a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
That's to get us through the season, hopefully, and then we'll probably need to spend another 10,000 next
Well,
year.
what I would do is
But-
bring that up with the Parks Master Planner
Yeah.
when we hire them on how to move forward.
Yeah,
And it just reiterates that we've got to stop nickel and diming the park department. We've got to get the master plan done and use the Parks Board more effectively to determine the priority of things. Everything is at an issue because we've deferred maintenance on so many items and cut funding to our Parks Department and staffing alone for too long that we're having an onslaught of issues all at once. And we've got to figure out what's the priority items to do first. And this body really needs to somewhat step back from directing pet projects and let the Parks Board that we have identify the needs and best come up with the ways that we address them through the master plan process.
Could we
I'd like
make
for
sure-
us to take a step back at directing these things.
Yes.
Oh, did you get what he said?
Yes.
Do you need him to repeat it?
No.
So,
It's being
may I, Mayor?
recorded, so we're good.
Did I hear Commissioner Wishman say, accuse the rest of this board of micromanaging?
That's why I just say, make
Oh
sure
my
that's down,
gosh.
please.
Gang up, guys. Come on, I can take it.
You take it, but it's just one thing or another. You throw millions and millions of dollars away and you're trying to help kids. I understand that you're single, you don't have kids, but our kids are important. They're our future and we're trying to keep them in this community.
No disagreement here,
And
Commissioner.
spending a little bit of money and helping them
That's why I
complete.
want to invest millions and millions in our park department to create the best system regionally we possibly can, but I want to do it strategically.
As long as it
Strategically
emanates,
takes
as long as it
6 months,
emanates from
6
you.
months, and
All right,
6
Mayor,
months.
Could I interrupt?
Go ahead.
Let's go. We need to get out
I
of here.
think it's clear that master plan is important to all of us, and we're simply expressing our desire that master plan come to fruition as soon as we can, and that means the RFP. Okay?
Any other new business?
So if we look into the lights, I'm sorry, Mayor, if we look into the lights, it's possible maybe for sponsors or something to help with the lights, or maybe putting their names on billboards or stuff, something down there. Something to look at.
Absolutely.
That was an option that was given.
I have one last item, and that
Sorry,
is asking staff to take another look at the Singing Bridge and whether we retrofit it again or get a new bridge. Thank you.
Just happen to
Any
have a
other
consultant in.
new business?
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. A huge staple in our community did pass away, and I did not mean to overlook him earlier when we did a moment of silence. So if we could, for Mr. Davenport, that would be
Oh,
greatly
yes.
appreciated, as his passing was a surprise to all of us, and at the same time, I think it so deserves a moment of silence for him as well. So.
Sure.
Thank you. And I'm finished.
Move to adjourn, Mayor.
Second.
That is in order. Moved and seconded, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, like sign.